Welcome for our webinar, Cybersecurity for All Computer Users. This webinar is created for simple computer users who just have their laptop. It's individual usually. In companies, IT department and security staff educating their employees, but it's rarely that individual users are educated what to do with their computer. And you don't have an IT department who is managing your computer. So you're really responsible for your computer and how you protect it and whom you engage with protection of your computer. So hopefully this webinar gives you good overview of different things you need to do to stay safe online. So to stay safe online or offline as well, like you really have to have a backup and equipment redundancy of some sort. It's security in general. You're trying to prevent something from happening. And if something happens, you're able to recover. And for me, backups are one of the first priorities actually before you implement even other protections, because that guarantees your recovery, how you recover from any incident, what happens. Whether it will be malware, whether it will be just coffee spilled on your laptop or water or hard drive failure. So you need to know how to recover. And other measures, it's more about prevention, that nothing happens in terms of malware, like keeping your software up to date. We'll go in depth for each of this, but use password manager. This is like a summary of what we're gonna talk about. Install antivirus and intrusion detection services, use encryption, watch for social engineering, and detect spam and phishing. Those are the basic things you need to do for your computer. While whole internet is constantly scanned, your computer usually is not connected directly to internet, or it's connected one way. Nobody from internet should be able to reach your computer directly. But any device which is connected directly to internet and reachable from internet, it's under constant attack. So since your computer is only one-way connection to internet, it makes it much easier to protect it, but you still need to do certain things to stay protected. And backup, it's one of the first things you need to do. It doesn't hurt until it happens. If you lose any data, only then you'll feel how much it's gonna hurt. Before that, you feel like nothing ever gonna happen, or you're not gonna spill water on your computer. Why would you? But if you need to recreate 6 months of working data, or even more, or lost it completely, if it's a business, you might go out of business completely. Depends on the data you lost and what you need to do to reproduce it. So it's way much easier, like to copy your data somewhere on external storage. And what backup is, it's really the second copy of your data. There are different backup strategies. One of the more common backup strategy, it's rule 3-2-1. It's where you need to have 3 copies of your data. One is the live data which you're using, and 2 backup copies on 2 different media, and 1 copy offsite. This is where it comes in 3-2-1. So it's 3 copies of your data on 2 backup media, 1 copy offsite. So that kind of gives you good reassurance that you can recover from whatever happens. offline data or offsite data for disaster recovery, that's when it's something major happens, and at least you have a copy of your data somewhere else that you can, it's, for example, your house burned, your computer was there, and your backup was there. So if your house burned, if you have a copy of your backup data somewhere else, you can recover from it. It doesn't mean like storing your data on external storage. It doesn't count as a backup, because I know some people stored their data on external storage thinking that they're good, they can move that data to another computer and start using it. While it gives that flexibility, external storage can fail, and they do fail, and people lost their data sometimes, and only then they realized it wasn't backup strategy to keep it on external data. So backup is really a second copy, because any technical devices, they fail. Laptops fail, hard drives fail, power supply fail. So, and part of the backup strategy, it's your data backup. There are different types of backup. It is a big subject in a way, which we are going to touch today, but we're going to touch it briefly. So the simplest thing you can do, you can just buy external USB drive and copy data there. It's the most economical way. It's and of course there are trades-off. Like you need to plug in your USB drive to do backup. You cannot automate it as easily because you need to plug in device, you need to remember to plug in, and how often you do backups. That's all matters. But even if you just do very rare, and it depends on your case, how often do you refresh files on your computer? How often do you want to do backups? So for manual backup, at least I believe anybody can do copy on USB drive immediately, and that's already gives you some level of protection. The next level of protection where you actually automate your backups, and maybe instead of USB drive, you have a network attached storage on your network at home or in the office, where storage is available through local network, and you can copy data there. And then it's actually already easier to automate your backup, that you don't need to remember about your storage, you just need to be connected to your Wi-Fi, and then install a program which will do backup for you periodically every hour. Like Macs have a time machine which is very handy to do backups. And there are different storages involved, like you can have a USB drive, network attached storage, or online storage like Dropbox or iCloud. So all of those could play into backup strategy, and depends how much data you need, how much storage you need. So it can be customized. It's not all the plans fit everybody, but it's for custom needs, depending how often you change your data and how you rely on it. You basically automate or do manual every week or every month. It's up to you. But if you don't have any backups at all and your device fail, it's sometimes it's possible to recover. It just costs much more than if you do backup originally. To recover failed drives, it will cost you way, way much more. And even if you lose just pictures and some files you stored, you will feel the pain after it happens. And it's much easier to prevent it before it happens. So highly encouraged to do backup. There are different type of backups as well. There's a data backup where you copy only files, or you actually can clone your drive which you can start up your computer from the drive. It's good if you engage with a local professional for computers who can help you with those different type of backups. But you can figure out by yourself also with YouTube videos how to do any type of backup. But as long as you do first step and you feel way much more protected from anything happens. Equipment redundancy is part of it. For example, if your power supply fails, your computer doesn't work without power supply for too long. So, and it depends how critical it is for you to have a working computer. Can you wait 3 days until your new power supply comes? Or like, it depends on the individual tolerance for risks like this. But do you have a spare computer in case your computer fails? And how do you restore data? And all of those exercises can be practiced ahead of time, periodically, that you have a reassurance that actually whatever happens, you're able to recover. So backup, it's in a way at the end of incident. Like sometimes it can be a malware where you're actually trying to protect it, but yet your computer got infected. And backup, it's really the reassurance that you can restore whatever happens. Another big measure is to keep all your software updated. That applies to your operating system and all other programs on your computer. The reason for it, as soon as new versions come out, and they discover some vulnerabilities in the software and they fix it. So periodically security patches applied. So let your operating system and your software update automatically. We're not going to cover supply chain in this webinar, which makes it harder when it's a compromise happens from trusted party. But in general, just keep your software up to date. I think that's the best advice I can give you right now. For password management, I know that a lot of people still struggle with passwords. Passwords has been long around, and they're actually fading already as a weak form of authentication. Yet it's many people don't have a good system yet. So here's a challenge question for you. Which password do you think is a stronger password? Number 1, with special characters, or number 2, a longer with regular words? Just decide for yourself right now for what you think is hardest, and we'll review it. Actually, the second password is a stronger password than the first because it's longer and it is supported by math behind the example. So it's the same passwords are here. So the first one with special characters and numbers, it's mathematically, it's actually defined by mathematical entropy, and it's easy to guess for computer. With 1,000 guesses per second, it takes only 3 days to break this password. So it's fairly easy. But for human, it's actually very difficult to remember all the special characters, numbers, and that was the thinking before for IT security industry together, and we forced people to create complex passwords. But actually, that was not needed. When you take 4 random words together, it creates way much more longer password and more secure. So the second password actually takes with the same 1,000 guesses per second, which actually calls a brute force attack. it takes 550 years to break this password. So, and it's much easier to remember for a person. So when you need to create a password, which you need to remember, actually, try for the longer one. I mean, I do still encourage people to put a couple of numbers or special characters. Hard to give up old habits, but it needs to be easy to remember. My recommendation in general for people to make it long and simple to remember. Minimum length for password which you need to remember is 15. Take 3-4 random words which are not tied by meaning to each other. Put a dash, dot, space in between, semicolon, and you have a great password right there. If you embed some special characters, of course, it's increase complexity, but it should be easy to remember for you. The same individual core password, I feel like it's for individual users, it's acceptable risk to use it in a couple of places. Like, for example, your computer login and your password manager, which we'll talk about. And then with one password, you get to access to all your passwords in password manager. Of course, the same password could be used for encrypted container, VPN certificate, SSH certificate, which normal users probably don't have those, but it's still, like in my regard, it's acceptable risk for this core password to be used there. Of course, if you use the separate passwords everywhere, it's better, but you have to remember then 5 passwords. So, and people just have such a hard time to remember any passwords at all. So that's kind of simplifies things, but that core password shouldn't be used on any web applications or any websites. The reason why, when you use a password on website somewhere, that password actually stored on that site. Because every time they need to compare whether it's the same password or not. And basically you become dependent on their security for that site specifically, whether they encrypt or hide that password through hash in a database or not, or maybe it's a plain text. So if hacker hacks that site, they could get hold of your password and try it on other places. That's partially why you should not use this core password anywhere online. And changing core passwords not too often, because it's very hard to change it and remember for you. We did force people in general like to change it every month sometimes, but it depends on the company setup and company policies. Like if you have a single sign-on where you sign in once and you have access to all applications, that's maybe makes sense. But for you to change your computer passwords, unless you suspect compromise, I'm not encouraging to change it too often. Changing it, of course, it does increase security, but it increases complexity as well. So here is what you should not do. Reuse your password in multiple accounts. It's clearly because if one account website got compromised, they get hold of your password and they try in multiple other places and see whether they can break in. And they are successful that time because people keep reusing the same password everywhere because they don't have a password manager where to store it. Don't store it in plain text file or piece of paper. Of course, any system is better than no system. Password manager is the best way to handle your password. It's a special program And there are free, there are paid versions of program. Of course, writing it on a paper, it's you can create secure system on the paper as well. Like when you add specific characters to your paper passwords, and if somebody gets hold of your paper, they're still not able to use your password because you know you added extra characters there. But it's a fairly cumbersome to find your passwords in the paper node. So especially if you have a lot of passwords, it's a worse investment into password manager. And plain text file, it's also, if there is malware, it can be stolen or other people can get to hold to your credentials. So it's not a best way of handling it. Yet it's better than no system at all, where people just forget their passwords and every time they reset their password on multiple sites. So by trying to get to best practices, don't use your birthday or any dates as a password, because that discloses and people can guess it. And don't use keyboard patterns. Like some people just slide and try to make it easy for typing your password. And don't share with others. Passwords are your own passwords. It's your individual online identity. So do use password manager, and we'll get to show which ones available. Turn on multi-factor authentication. Usually it depends on the site, how they configure whether they enable two-factor authentication for you or not. And if it's available, do spend extra time to set it up, because between you and a hacker, the only difference for online services, it's your password. And any online systems which are available through internet, it's been brute forced attacked, and somebody is trying to guess your password, because that's the only way they get to your system. And try to enable two-factor authentication, because that increases your chances. And what's a multi-factor or two-factor authentication? It's when you receive a text on your mobile, or you have a certain authenticator app on your phone, which allows to increase your authentication, that you is you in digital world. And change passwords as it fits the need. Like online, on different websites, it's encouraged to change it more often than your core password for your computer, unless you use single sign-on. So with Password Manager, there are different features at your disposal, like password generator, where you can generate a password automatically, and it just increase the length of it. And it's really gets very hard to hack a password which is long and complex. And with password managers, you don't even need to know your password. You actually can store it there. It's make sure that you have a password manager installed on your mobile device and your computer, and it's available online through some secret key. So it will be available to you, that you don't get locked up without your passwords. And you need to think that through also, like which password manager do you use, what features it has. And there are a lot of password managers out there. And I would not necessarily recommend which one to use for you. You can do your own research. And we are using 1Password, for example, for our needs. KeePass is good, it's free. It's if you pay something, it's of course, it's usually you get better value than something for free. So KeePass is good. but 1Password and other dash line, Bitwarden, they're just much better because they provide more features, more convenience to you, integration to a browser, and so forth. So, and other things like if password get compromised on some websites, your password manager actually can notify you that that website has been compromised and need to change that password. So I do highly recommend to invest into password manager because for a couple of dollars a month, it solves your headache with passwords. You still need to maintain your passwords. You need to get accustomed with your password manager, but it's a worthwhile investment. We get to malware management. Because when software is created, it's not clear the purpose of software, whether it's a malicious intent or valid intent. And it's sometimes actually very hard to distinguish. Is it a good software? Is it bad software? How do you know? Like what's the intent behind that software? And of course, when security researchers experiment with different software and determine, okay, this looks like malicious software, let's mark it and notify everybody that this software is malicious. So right now, there are so many viruses out there. It's not necessarily that you catch a virus quickly. Like it is a risk management. I do recommend to have a antivirus malware, and there are different degrees also of antivirus. There are antiviruses which just scan, and there are antiviruses which implement behavior. They're looking at software, how it behaves, and mark it that way. Or there is even advanced features like for intrusion detection, where the same software, for example, Dropbox installed on your computer, hacker could reach out to your computer infected and use Dropbox to pump your data into their Dropbox account. So Dropbox program by itself is not malicious, but hackers can use that to log into their Dropbox and steal your data that way. So that advanced features of intrusion detection and response, it's right now it's coming with different versions of antivirus. And if you feel that you need that advanced protection, ask your IT person to install it for you. That gives more reassurance that your data and any intrusions will be detected. This is actually a certain Gartner market analysis firm where it evaluates different providers for malware management, who is a leader, who has which market share, and what their vision is. So it's really, this graphic shows you completeness of vision according to Gartner, how they evaluate, like how well the company understands the problem. And then ability to execute on that vision. It's and that you can see different companies, they position themselves in different markets and kind of they compete, they keep changing. It's not a static thing because company develop their products and leaders change. Encryption. Not everybody understands encryption, but it's a one way of masquerading your data, that your data is not recognizable as a plain text. These days, encryption is needed for sure when you connect to different websites. And most of the websites, they were forced to already implement this, what's called HTTPS. And most websites support it, and Google even removing some lock icon from a browser soon, because most of the sites should have a secure connection right now. There are different other connections protocol to connect securely, but it depends what are your needs. Like there are corporate VPNs, for example, to connect to corporate resources. But for individual, like there is a consumer grade VPN. And what it does, it encrypts your tunnel to the VPN point. And you might appear like connecting from different country altogether. Most often you don't need it. And most of the secure sites like your bank and everything, they implemented very good HTTPS that you don't need additional VPN to feel secure in that transaction. So that's a encryption in transit when data is traveling from your computer to a server. And there is encryption on your local hard drive. And there's a full disk encryption. You can create encrypted containers. So, and it's once again comes to your need, what kind of sensitive data you have stored on your computer. And it's very easy sometimes to enable full disk encryption. It's not so difficult to do. It's just one of the settings in operating system. But please consult your IT support and they can enable it for you. When visiting malicious sites, of course, you don't visit it intentionally. They just redirect you there. Whether you clicked on something in email and you get to malicious site, and they can try to trick you. For example, this is an example when there's all sorts of pop-ups on the website trying to install Adobe Flash Player update, and it's really trying to that you download some of their malicious software and you install it. You feel that you're doing something good by installing an update for Flash Player, but in reality, they just masquerading it. And sometimes it's very challenging to distinguish like valid updates or not. And but whole this tricking part, it's you need to learn how to avoid it. Otherwise, they'll take over your computer, connected to botnet of infected computers. So, and this is what's called social engineering. Social engineering, it's a like complex term, feels like, but it's really a tricking people. If they cannot break your computer directly, they cannot infect it. So they cannot break into your bank account, for example, because it's difficult through technical measures implemented. But they can trick you into logging into your bank account, transferring money somewhere else. And all they need to create is this schema, malicious schema, how they're going to do that. It is a psychological manipulation of people into performing actions or divulging confidential information, like your bank account or passwords or other secret information you might have, like social security number. It's a type of confidence trick for the purpose of information gathering, fraud, or system access. Confidence trick is often one of the many steps in more complex fraud schema. For example, if somebody calls you and they pretend to be from your wireless provider, you don't have a way to verify their identity at all. They might be from your wireless provider, like AT&T or Verizon, or they might not. They're just pretending to be from that company. And if they're confident enough, you will believe them. That's what it meant by psychological manipulation, that if person on the other end super confident that they're pretending to be somebody, and you'll believe it because they were so certain about it. So don't get tricked by this. And by phone, actually, you can verify anybody's identity. Like anybody can call you and pretend to be anybody completely. And there are malicious call centers, even people calling other people all day long, trying to do this fraud schema. And those fraud schemas are carefully designed and other people implementing, and they're pretty good at it. And people can ask you for text message on your phone. Meanwhile, they actually applied a credit on your name, and all they need is a confirmation that you own the number. And if you tell them the number you received, so here you go. There is a credit on your name, which you don't know anything about. Social engineering, it's a top-level term for tricking people by phone, by email, in person even. Spam and phishing, it's individual already social engineering through email. And there are spam, it's just unwanted emails. And phishing, where they're trying to assume legitimate identity and tricked you into either installing malware, clicking on the link, opening the file. So you need to be careful, because their intent could be malicious. And for phishing, it is by definition, it is a malicious intent. And how do you determine phishing? Like IT systems in general are pretty good in determining 95% of the spam, but 5% of the spam still gets to you. And you need to be careful. Like, of course, if you click on malicious link, your antivirus could stop you from connecting to it. If you don't have antivirus, it's worse. So it's a matter of risk management. But of course, in the best place that you actually don't click on malicious link, you know how to recognize. Look for spelling and bad grammar. It's a one way to determine. Spelling mistakes are fairly common from other countries when it's sent. Be aware of links and emails. You need to mouse over the link or a button which you're about to click, and don't click, just mouse over, and the link where it's leading to will appear. And sometimes hackers can, spammers can get a valid email, and all they need to do to embed their link into email. Otherwise, it's a legitimate email from valid company. So before you click on any links, highly recommend to mouse over and have a look which domain is it leading to. Because if email is from PayPal, it should lead to PayPal. It shouldn't lead to some strange domain which is unknown to you. Look for threats and urgent warnings, because they try to make you click before you think. You really just they're trying to get you into the emotional space where you feel like, oh, let me have a look at it quickly. And those urgent warnings, it's one sign of malicious intent. Look for suspicious attachment. If you don't expect attachments, don't open it, because any Word document or PDF, they can have malicious macros in it, which could infect your computer. See whether it's using your name or not. If it's something generic, spammers usually use something generic because they don't know your name. And another important ones, look for strange senders or reply address. Like from technical point of view, it's very hard for spammers to change sender's address. And when you see the context of email and from which domain is it sent from, it can alert you. Like, for example, if content is from PayPal, and but sender address is not PayPal, that should alert you already that something is suspicious about it. Here is just how to spot a phish. To from look at attachments, link, subject, and we'll review some examples, because most likely you're already receiving a lot of spam emails and you manage somehow to avoid them. But to review, in this case, dear info, well, it's not individual. And then you see strange attachments with strange extension for the file. It says purchase order, but if you didn't purchase anything, well, don't open it. In this example, you see it's undisclosed recipients to whom it was sent. And well, that's already suspicious. And then you look from whom it was sent. Is that the person, you know the person or not? Email was created that anybody can send messages to anybody. And that's partially why it's hard to stop spam, because email was created that way. Please attach quote. If you're not expecting a quote, don't open it. In this case, it was a PayPal, very interesting fraud schema, where if you mouse over view transaction, and of course you wonder like who charged you $50 here, and you see domain it's leading to is stupid-attacker.com. Well, that's not PayPal, and it's and they had this interesting redirect on this side. If you click once, you see it goes to their site, and it's kind of shows they're trying to harvest your credentials for PayPal. And then after they harvest that, they can log into real PayPal and transfer the funds or do something malicious. But in this example, they actually first they redirected to their site. If you didn't get caught on this, if you didn't enter the credentials, and after entering credentials, actually, they could potentially redirect it to a real site as well. But if you click multiple times on this link, they're actually redirecting you quickly to PayPal already. So it was a clever way of trying to trick you. But still you see their site appearing first, and then they're quickly redirecting you to PayPal. This is an example of security service, some kind of credit union, and you see domain name. It's a very strange domain where it's coming, and they're trying to masquerade their domain. But you need to examine it carefully. You see after .org, there is a dash, and then online, and it goes on until it comes to .com. So that's the real domain. So if you don't need to log in there, well, it's not the site you're familiar with. They really try to harvest your credentials here. You received a bill from AT&T for $555, and you wonder what it is. And of course, you want to view the bill, but if you take a chance and examine from whom it is, it's really, if you see a domain name, it's not from AT&T.com. It's from different domain. And then if you mouse over the link before clicking on it, you see it's also some kind of .com.brazil domain. So it's not from AT&T, and you shouldn't click on it. So hopefully that gives you a good feeling for how to detect spam and not to click on it. There are plenty of other measures you could do. Security is not white and black, secure, not secure, but there are degrees of security you can get through backups. Depends how many backups you have, and how you arrange it. So, but other measures could include software host firewall, which it's easy to enable it, and BIOS boot password and DNS content filtering, network security. Those are a little bit more advanced, and you definitely need help from IT support person. Hopefully you find it useful, and from now on you'll stay more safe online, and backups will help you to prevent anything. Thank you for attending, and I wish you to stay safe.